Welcome to the I Heart My Fitbiz podcast, where we will be covering everything you need for inspiration, motivation, and practical advice in how to create a thriving fitness business. Welcome to this week's podcast. Today we have Christien Bird from the Menopause Movement. I'm going to hand over to Christien in a moment, but today we're talking about making your fitness business work for menopausal clients. And so if you have a fitness business that's purely based around menopause, or maybe you do aspects of your business working with women going into menopause or in menopause, perimenopause, all those things, then this is going to be hugely beneficial for you. And I actually only discovered the menopause movement, I don't know if it was on Instagram, but you came up and I thought, wow, this is like really, really amazing. I went to your website and looked at all, and it's actually something that I think there's nothing like it I've seen in the industry so far. So I'm really excited to talk to you about it, and I'm really excited for you to share some of your knowledge as well. So what I'm going to do now is going to hand over to Christien, and she's going to introduce herself, who is she, what she does, what the menopause movement is, and then we'll get straight into the podcast content. Hello, Christien.
Hi, thank you, Charlotte. A lovely introduction. We were really pleased when you asked us to do this podcast, because I feel I'm a physiotherapist, a women's health specialist, and I've been in clinical practice for long enough now to know that if we treat in isolation, we're just not effective enough. So working with the fitness industry, really bridging health and fitness together is something I feel strong about, because we're just not good enough by ourselves. Women often end up in the fitness industry, and you are the ones that often have the long-term relationship with people. So part of Menopause Movement, the training platform, really was born to merge those two professional groups together, because too often still I think we work in isolation, and we really don't want to keep our message in between for treatment rooms. And also we all work so much better if we learn from each other and mentor each other in that way as well. So thanks for the invite, much appreciated.
You're welcome.
So I originally trained in Holland, and then I came to the UK and got stuck, mainly because I started rowing. And for personal reasons, I stayed here as well. Then I went, after my physio training, I worked in NHS for many years, did a master's in research methodology at King's College in London. Then I had my two babies, which really further developed my interest in women's health, because they're both blessed with heads. And that's an interesting process. So I dropped my sort of sport and musculoskeletal list. And after I had the babies, I started up the White Hart Clinic, which is interdisciplinary clinics with doctors, psychologists, physios, osteopaths, podiatrists. And we work very closely together here. Then I suppose, as for many people, things really changed through COVID. We were running a course with people I was doing a lot of menopause events with for our charter society, and it was going to be live, and suddenly we had to go online, the usual story of many of us. So we put the course online. It was hugely successful. It was only for physios, and we got so much response from other disciplines that wanted to do it. But our professional body is great. I'm on the educational committee, and at the same time, it is quite physio-based and biased as well. So that's kind of how Menopause Movement was born, with Joe and Anne, who I used to run a lot of events with, and they were so brilliant at it. I thought, actually, the courses they run are as good as any of the physio courses I've been on. And that's kind of how we got together as a group of three of us. And we the summer of 21, we filled most of the modules. And since then, we've sort of added another about 15 webinars with specialized subjects as well. And also the other side of the reason we call Menopause Movement is always essential to health, but particularly into the menopause. It's so critical and such a focused part of it. And also I love everything to do with movement. I used to row. Now I'm still an age group triathletes representing Britain. So supporting women to enjoy movement and staying strong is a very big part of what I enjoy doing.
Yeah, that's amazing. I think now menopause is more is coming into the spotlight, isn't it? A lot
Yeah.
more, whereas before it wasn't. So I think a lot of fitness professionals that I know are moving into that area and moving into helping, because again, it is a quite a specialized area, and there is a lot of knowledge that fitness professionals need to know before, again, working with menopausal women and adding in that movement. And also there's the other side of the barriers, which we'll come to in a moment, but the barriers to women who are going through the menopause. They might not want to move, and they might use that as almost like not an excuse, but something not to move and not to keep moving and exercising. So I'm really excited to get into it. So first of all, what would you say are the basics to working with women into menopause, and how to retain them as clients so they stay with you for a lifetime? So for fitness
Sure.
professionals listening, what are those basics, and how can they make their fitness business working with menopausal women, so those women stay with them for the longevity of their fitness business?
Sure, and that might just be, this will be in an absolute nutshell. So who are those women really? who are they? So the natural menopause at 51. So that's non-surgical or not an early menopause. Most women start their perimenopause about 45. And I think in terms of retaining clients, it's really important to remember, once you're postmenopausal for the rest of your life. So it's a non-transient population.
Yeah.
Once you've got them, you've got them. Because in the clinic, also as a women's health specialist at the White Hart Clinic, our team, we do a lot of pregnancy and postnatal. And you continue in terms of your marketing and your business strategy, you continue have to have a new cohort of people, because pregnant people don't necessarily socially mix with people that just had babies. So it's a new cohort all the time. And the beauty of the menopausal population is they are one cohort. And they all bring their buddies as well. So I think the non-transient nature of it, and obviously around 45, our hormones start to fluctuate with many, many different symptoms. The obvious ones are the hot flushes and the night sweats, but it comes a lot with mood changes, which we now think that one of the early symptoms of the menopause are musculoskeletal joint problems, which obviously is really relevant to fitness professionals. So after that very fluctuating time, most women around the age of 51 will flatline in terms of their reproductive hormones, their estrogen and their progesterone. But then obviously they will flatline for the rest of their lives. And I always like to think about estrogen a little bit like water to the garden. It's our anabolic steroid. Anabolics, so it's our rebuilding, our recovery. And obviously that flatlining and being at low level does mean that we have to make changes in terms of how we train, and most certainly make a shift. And I think through the mood changes and poor sleep, women, although the desire to exercise is there, often are reluctant to exercise. And of course, in terms of retaining, it's not just the fact that it's a non-transient population, it also is the fastest growing population. So it makes complete business sense to base your your business on this group. Also the demographic group, from a business point of view, that often are financially slightly more stable.
I was going to say as well, I think that age group as well tend to be more and this I've not gone into teaching menopause, but just from the things like the actively retired classes that I've done, they tend to be more loyal and consistent once they get into that exercise and once they're in the swing of it, and they tend to want that community a lot more as well. And they do tend to be a little bit more open to coming into that kind of community if there's others there as well.
I agree. Yeah, because I think the barriers are so much higher. So once you've got them hooked, you've got them.
Yeah,
also
definitely.
that community really removes a lot of those barriers. So that community, and I think training or exercising or just moving with a buddy, with a friend, with a neighbor, it doesn't matter who it is, really does make a difference. I think creating a community I think makes a lot of sense to the women that want to get fit and healthy, but also makes a lot of business sense.
Yeah, and like you said, women's aid, you tend to be kind of up and down. So you might join a fitness class in your 20s or your 30s, and then you might get pregnant, and that takes you away from that class, and then something else might happen. So it's kind of up and down. But like you said, menopause, from that 51 onwards, it is kind of like straight line. There's not a lot of fluctuation in terms of life as such, and health. Brilliant.
It's worth mentioning that women in sports 2 years ago, but no, just over a year ago, published their second part of Movement and Menopausal Women. And I think what it showed is that 84% of menopausal women are inactive in terms of World Health Organization statistics. Nearly all of them have the desire to move. So in that way, they're a captive audience. The desire is absolutely there. The barriers are so high. And in our modules, we talk a lot about what those barriers are and how to overcome them, and how to screen and how to talk to women into the menopause to help to remove those barriers so they feel safe and they're in a space that resonates with them. And I think the community that you just mentioned is a really important part of that as well. But although there's a huge group that won't exercise, the desire is absolutely there.
Yeah. And if the desire is there, it's just literally getting past those barriers, isn't it? And then once that hurdle is over, then it's quite.
And I think what's really helpful for fitness professionals to realize that 90% of those women, those menopausal women in the research, said they would exercise if it was recommended by a health professional or GP. So it shows that, again, making that link makes so much sense for women and for us all together to keep women healthy, and it makes business sense.
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
we work together and we refer to each other. That could be the reason why women think, okay, if my physio or my doctor says I should exercise, I probably don't have to be fearful of exercise. So they feel also supported in their health to move on to that. So I think it's such a no-brainer, really. We've got to work together on this population group.
And I think a lot then, I've interviewed quite a few fitness professionals and things like that, and it's so important, isn't it, to have that professional community of engaging with each other and working together and helping each other out. I think that has a huge effect, because a fitness instructor might want to go down that route, but might feel a little bit like, oh, I'm not good enough, I'm not qualified enough, I don't know enough to go down that route. So again, having this kind of community of, just again, me interviewing you, it just breaks down that barrier for fitness professionals.
Actually, I'm so glad you said that, because we did a webinar, I think it was in October, with some of our members who've done our big course, and we were sort of asking the ones that were being interviewed, so what was the main thing that you changed? And what I really love to hear, that they said, actually, I've now created my own community locally. I was confident to go and talk to the gynecologist. I was confident to go and talk to another specialist and a psychologist, and I was just so happy to hear that it gave them the confidence and the language to create those communities.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because I think for all of us, it takes time. It's kind of, you have to get out of your comfort zone, but it's so worth it.
Absolutely. And then again, it does make business sense as well, because recommendations and lots of different things like that, it works well for business. What shifts do fitness professionals need to make in the way they train women into menopause? What are the benefits and why? Like, what are the benefits of, so from fitness professional point of view, if they are going into teaching menopausal women, what are the benefits for them as a fitness instructor, but also what are the benefits for menopausal women doing exercise and doing more exercise? And you kind of touched on that a little bit before, but what are the benefits, and why do women need to exercise throughout the menopause?
Well, I think the fact that we obviously first fluctuate our anabolic steroids, and it really is, if you look at the menopausal women, if you're in the perimenopause, that's why blood tests are useless, but it's almost like you give a 3-year-old a crayon and you ask them to make a drawing of what our estrogen levels look like in the perimenopause. No wonder they'll go a little bit mad, a little bit crazy in that time. Obviously, that's very different experience for most women as well. Some women will fluctuate less than others. But it does mean that our recovery completely changes and our muscle building as well. So we lose lean muscle mass, which we do from age of 30, unless we train hard enough. But it accelerates in the menopause. And the same for bone mass as well. And I think that's so key, because especially low bone density is probably the one single factor that causes more death and disability in women into the menopause than most other things. And I think, women are worried about a lot of health issues, but what I would love them to be worried about, because they can do something about it, is low bone density. And muscles, it's as simple as that. And I know we all know this, muscles pull on bone, but they have to pull on bone quite hard to maintain that bone density. And then cruelly, we lose our anabolic steroids. So we want to make those muscles work hard, but they don't recover as quickly. So, and there's mood changes at the same time. So the shift is really got to be towards more muscle strengthening. Which is hard, because a lot of women will be fearful of that, especially if they've had a DEXA scan and it showed low bone density. It's not contraindicated, it's indicated. And we have 2 modules about low bone density and how to train and how to strength train with women with low bone density confidently. And that's actually that it's so clearly, it's highly evidence what you can do. There's this amazing Australian study when women doing squats with pretty impressive weights and deadlifts, and they had low bone density and they all improved, and there were very, very few adverse events. So we like to think that at the end of the course, fitness professionals are very confident about training women to keep their lean muscle mass and to keep their bone density, or improve their bone density. Also think it's a group, because they have comorbidities, they may have low bone density, they may be pre-diabetic, there's a lot that things, they may not sleep. But as a fitness professional, that's also where the challenge comes. Training already very well and healthy people, hasn't in any way got the same challenge as women that have got a whole history behind them. They may leak. Pelvic floor obviously is my passion. So we have quite a few modules on bowel, on bladder, on prolapse, etc., and how to load and train women confidently that may leak, that may have a prolapse, how we can work together, how you can change the load. Those are the sort of things that I like to think really makes work quite challenging and also quite interesting, and hooks women into the exercise, because once they are with you and they know confidently can train with a prolapse, they will be absolutely delighted instead of feeling broken and fearful.
Exactly, and I think it must be, obviously there's an element of being very rewarding in terms of, because everybody goes through it differently. What would you recommend to fitness professionals when they are teaching? Because some people obviously teaching a class of menopausal women, so and everybody's going to be different. So what would you recommend in that scenario to fitness professionals? Is there something that you teach in the program, or is it, I'm just going to hand it over to you?
No, sure, because our program is quite generic, but we like to think to give everyone the tools, and it doesn't matter if it's a yoga class or a one-to-one or you do kettlebells, it doesn't matter. The principles are exactly the same, and that if we promote weakness in women, we do harm. So we've got to promote strength. And how to confidently do that. And I don't really, as long as women find something they love, I don't mind if that's in a yoga class, in a Pilates class, with a kettlebell, just somewhere in the fields. I mean, there's so hundreds of different ways of doing that. And actually the principles are very clear, and it is about helping women to feel confident about strength training and then bumping it up every time. Like even body pump is a great example of that, because body pump can play a fantastic role, but if you always do exactly the same weights with no change, you may not promote that lean muscle mass and that bone density in the same way. So a lot of it is about diversity. Or if it's a yoga class and you do your vinyasa always with your knees on the floor, you're not going to bump it up. So eventually, once they're ready, it can be baby steps. It doesn't matter how long they have it takes, but at one point it's got to be a side plank, and probably side plank with movement. So there's diversity as well, because bones need to be pulled out at different directions, and also your cardiovascular system. So and those, I suppose, we wouldn't say how to train a menopausal woman with a kettlebell, for instance. It's not like that. But what are the tools you need in your box to apply it to your fitness setting? And it really doesn't matter what fitness setting it is.
Yeah, it's like almost like the principles and the basics of
that's right. For instance, after
however you
had breast cancer surgery and they got lymphedemia, can you strength train? Those are the sort of questions that they're pretty complex, really. And actually the answers are quite simple. Yes, it is an indication. And if anything, strength training actually helps lymphedemia. So those are all things and specialities and niches, hopefully, that fitness professionals can develop once they're confident, where there's a contraindication, where there's an indication. We also have a blog on our website about screening, about pelvic health, because it can be quite hard how to ask if someone has bowel leakage or bladder leakage or feels prolapse symptoms, vaginal heaviness during training. What do you do? So some of it's about language, how to introduce it in a one-to-one setting, how to introduce it in the class, and there's loads of different answers to that, because a lot of it is about building trust. But I think fitness professionals are in such a beautiful place like that. They will get to know their women. And once they talk to the women about that, I can promise you, they'll tell you everything. They will share.
I think for fitness professionals, it's just having that knowledge, because I think there is a lot of, like I say, sometimes fitness professionals don't go down certain routes because they think they have to be like really knowledgeable or do a really specialized kind of training, but actually it's just the overview of things that you need to know, and once you know those things, you know them, if that makes sense.
Exactly. And there might be some occasional updates, and for our members we continue to do that, but really the principles and the tools of the box will stay quite. So, and for women is probably increased recovery, lots of diversity in movement, strength training, and bump it up slowly. In every way, take the fear away from that, and probably a little bit more VO2 max, because those we tend to keep our endurance capacity. And of course, we still want to train that engine, that basic engine as well. But it's the VO2 max. And most women will be most reluctant if you ask them to do any high intensity interval training. So, and I think a lot of it, I always say to my patients, this is my email. It's in a discomfort, you'll get the benefits. And I'll promise you, I'll come and pick you up from the floor. We'll help you. We'll come and pick you up. We'll help you. And getting used to that level of discomfort, and that's where the benefits is. And into the menopause, that becomes even more important, because we lose some of our anabolic steroids, so we really need that lean muscle mass to keep our metabolism going and stop us from being pre-diabetic, and the list just goes on and on, really, in terms of benefits.
This isn't a part of the what we were going to discuss today, but it's just come into my mind. What would you say, because a lot of women, I get kind of more with sometimes when people get pregnant, they haven't done any exercise, and then they get pregnant and they want to go into some sort of exercise. Is menopause like the same? If somebody hasn't done exercise, but now they've been recommended to, is there any, not that they shouldn't do any exercise, but what would you say to somebody who's come to a fitness professionals class and they've never really done exercise before, but they've been recommended to because of the menopause? Is there anything that they should know in particular?
I think that's a brilliant question, because this is actually really different to pregnancy. Because in pregnancy, we can absolutely continue to exercise as long as we don't super overheat. We don't go running 10 miles in a heat wave in the middle of the day. That's not good. But in pregnancy, you can absolutely continue with what you were doing already. So your pre-pregnancy fitness gives you all your indication what you're going to continue to do. In the menopause, when women either reluctant exercise or haven't exercised, haven't got the confidence, it's all about taking them by the hand and making them move. So it's actually unless they've got a fracture, I can never think of an indication why they shouldn't exercise. You know, to menopausal women, I always say, well, your mum was right in the end. The only dangerous exercise is running with a pair of scissors. That's it. And in terms of screening, I think we need to get away from always ticking all those boxes about people's health, and almost, if they don't exercise, then when they sit on the sofa and have long periods of sedentary behavior, that's when they should do health screening forms, not when they move. So,
absolutely.
But I think what's really important to acknowledge that at the same time, that women will have fear about exercise, and they might have more joint problems. And if you've got any heart problems, of course you want to work with a healthcare professional, but even then it's actually hardly ever contraindicated. Because the benefits nearly always outweigh the risks. And of course, if we work with people, there are always small risks in everything we do, but we can't shy away from that as long as the benefit clearly outweighs.
Definitely.
And I think in exercise, that's a pretty safe
Which
one.
It leads us nicely to the next topic that we're going to talk about, which is the barriers to exercise. Because I think there's barriers to exercise for most women, menopausal or not. But again, it could be, is it heightened when women reach the menopause? And what do you suggest to fitness professionals if they are they may be setting up a class for menopausal women, but they're not getting maybe many people through the door because of these barriers? And what barriers are there, and how can we overcome them to help women come into fitness?
I always think in a way we've got two groups there. We've got the group that are always used to fitness, and the last thing they're ever going to do is the over 50s class or the menopause class, even when they're in the 80s. Like, I'm not doing that. I'm not that old. So I think we have to cater for them, and also maybe market it differently.
Because if they're already quite fit, and they're moving into menopause, and it is almost like, oh, it's going to be an easy class. It's going to be, if I go to that menopause, it's going to be easy. It's not going to challenge me. Whatever.
So I think getting a name for a class, if you start specializing in that area, is really hard. But I think it's got to all be about strengthening that new life, to strengthen that whole menopause, whatever you want to call, what names you want to use. But I think that's a big challenge. And I think from a marketing perspective, we all will keep trying to come up with some good ideas there. And then of course there are the women that either have stopped exercising, that women in sport research, do have a look at the Women in Sport website. It's just so helpful the way they break it down. But does break my heart. And this, especially into the menopause, one of the biggest barriers for women is shame. And I think that's a really helpful thing to realize. Gyms often don't resonate with women. They think they're either not fit enough, too fat, you name it. Body image, obviously, in the menopause can be devastating as well. It's hard for women at any age, but into menopause, it can become a real challenge. And a lot of women won't identify with someone in lycra who just throws a yoga mat on their back and wonders. Just definitely. Not them.
And it can be intimidating, can't it, to then.
So the judgment, they're often tired. So I think it's really important that in a program, media is acknowledge how important self-care and recovery is, and if there's injury, how to recover, to really take them by the hand. And that's also catered in baby steps. And I know that might sound a little bit contradictory, but I'm saying we've really got to strengthen women and we've got to bump it up. And that's true. But at their own time, and in a way that they get hooked. And they don't leave us, really. They trust us.
And that, I think that it's not like taking leaps forward, like straight into the top level, and but really bringing them in gradually. And like I said, that is a lot on trust. And I think that's with any kind of fitness, but especially with the menopause, there's a lot on trust, and building that trust, and building that almost like that safe place. You want someone to feel safe when they come to you, that they know that you understand and that you can help them.
And I think that safe place is important, especially, let's say they've got low bone density, or you may think they have, and you recommend them to go to a DEXA scan, which a lot of women should have and don't often have. So it's cheap, it's safe. So we need to know about women's bone density. And again, I think fitness professionals can play a big role in that. And that's why we've got a module on like the simple screening things. Have there been eating disorders? Have you been breastfeeding for a long period of time? Have you had a fracture? Did your mom have osteoporosis? Those really simple questions that make you think, this person probably should go to their GP and ask for a DEXA, a DEXA scan.
Because again, a fitness professional might not know to ask that, and might not know, like say, the questions to ask.
Exactly. But it never takes long to think actually that women looks or could be in a risk group, and it could change their lives by identifying that. And also if they have a DEXA scan, it's all good, fantastic. Never be worried about referring. And I know NHS under pressure, but just keep referring, especially in women's health. I think we've got to keep knocking on the door until women get the care that they need. Really, that's. But then there is that other side of the group as well, that because I do some age group stuff, and this year I've gone to an older age group, and I thought, that's great, everyone is going to slow down, and blimey, they're not. So also kind of like, they're that age and they can still run that fast. So some women will still be like machines, so don't underestimate them. Either the ones that have kept training, really. So also don't expect them to be weak or have lost their ambitions.
And almost like not patronizing as well. It's that fine line of like knowing your stuff, but not talking. I mean, I don't know any fitness professional that talks down to anyone, but not talking down, not kind of minimizing how they feel, or not patronize, not being patronizing.
Like, don't make any assumptions.
You can't do that.
Yeah, they might want to run a really fast marathon, or they might just want to go for a walk in the park with their mates, and reluctantly will start adding some strength training until they love it. But one thing I think in terms of barriers, which is such a hidden barrier and happens to most women, is bowel and urinary problems and prolapses. And again, that's why it's a big part of our modules, because it's so important to fitness professionals. Why have women often got only black leggings on, and they put an extra jumper around their waist, all sorts of signs. And I think to have the language, and eventually once you've got the relationship, the confidence to mention those things, women really will feel so supported in that way. Often they suffer in silence.
It's going back to that, the shame that you mentioned of like, it's embarrassing, or it's, I can't mention that. But building that trust, it allows that open communication, doesn't it?
Absolutely. And women they tend to be so good at managing those symptoms, like vaginal heaviness and pelvic organs dropping out of the pelvis, and they still exercise and they're still doing stuff. And actually, so often there's so much that can be done once we all work together, or they stop because they feel broken. But a lot of women also are fantastic putter-uppers. And with a lot of patients, I always sort of say, actually, at the end of the day, there's no medals to be won. No one, you will never, there's no statues erected because someone put up with urinary incontinence for most of their lives, which so many women so many women do. So please knock on people's door and go ask for help. Talk to your fitness professionals, and they can signpost you. So a lot of it is about signposting to each other as well, and removing barriers. Once women, they find the right place, and like you're saying, have the confidence to signpost. And if sometimes you get the signpost wrong, it doesn't matter, does it? Then that person hopefully will signpost a bit further.
What about the emotional and psychological barriers as well? Like again, it comes a lot down to, I suppose, the confidence to go to a class. So if a menopausal woman has been asked to go, move more, go to a fitness class, but a lot of the time it is like psychological, isn't it? It's this lack of confidence, and so that's going to be a huge barrier as well, I presume, and heightened in menopause as well.
And I don't think there's an easy answer to that, because there's so many amazing programs that are out there for women. We're working with quite a big gym group at the moment, that not the gym group, but a big group of gyms nationally to create courses modules for women to then move on to the normal gym. So I think a step up into it, just something where you take them by the hands. And this particular group, they've just got like a 6 weeks moduled course with, with a bit of exercise, a bit of awareness, creating a community, and then hopefully they will, and that's what the business side of them is, will then continue to use the gym confidently. So they can't stay in that menopause group forever. Then they will move onto the real gym floor, the body pump or the yoga or whatever or swimming, whatever they want to, want to do. So I think it is probably creating a platform or awareness or a workshop, depending on your work environment, what works best, or even just on social media to say that you welcome menopausal women, write blogs about it, just anything that women start to resonate and think, oh, this is my place. I think the way the images are as well, that it's diverse enough that women feel not grey though, because when you used to Google menopause, all these great images used to come up. So in our branding, we always try to be really colourful. So it doesn't have to be dull or boring or low key. It can still be fun and colourful.
Exactly, and also even more so to make it feel like it's almost like you're not separate. You don't want to feel like you're separating them from, kind of bunching them all together and saying, you're a separate group of society or that kind of thing.
Of sad people that are falling behind.
And you don't want to make it seem like it's, a divided thing. So actually making it fun and making it colourful and making your marketing that kind of welcoming instead of I've seen quite a few which is just a bit boring, almost clinical, just like a little bit. And
no, absolutely. And I think now you're saying that, I think we've got to put a lot of optimism in it. First of all, as a menopausal woman, we're lucky we're still alive. We've made it. So that's one thing. So that's already a privilege. And there's so many good things that can be part of that. Be part as well. So there are lots of positives, as long as we all together as a community will find those together. And there are challenges, absolutely, and some women are hit by a bus by the menopause. But as long as we all support each other in that and just understand it a bit better, I think that can already make a massive
absolutely
difference, really.
Absolutely. So moving on to one of our final points, why focus on movement? Again, we've talked really a lot about it, but focusing on movement rather than I don't know, maybe some different avenues that menopausal women could go down. Why focus on movement? And how can the Menopause Movement Training Programme help fitness professionals in the movement of menopause, if that makes sense? So why movement, and how can the program that you've created really help fitness professionals be a part of that movement to get menopausal women moving?
Sure. And I think the program is truly interdisciplinary, but I often find that a lot of the courses then were interdisciplinary, but only for health. The whole point of the course is to put health and fitness together, not separate. They're not binary, not to separate those two out. So we've got a fantastic psychologist, is actually my favorite module, and a dietitian and a nutritionist and a gynecologist that explains everything that you need to know about HRT, hormones, reproductive symptoms, just to understand the female body, not to be an expert, but at least to know when to signpost or understand it well enough that you've got the evidence, because there's so much rubbish out there or disinformation out there as well. So the training program hopefully will put all those disciplines together, and we all understand well enough how we work so we can signpost to each other. And the focus on movement is probably partly because we felt other courses didn't do that in the same way. And of course, there's like a fantastic menopause for yoga course, but this is much more, what tools can we give you as long as we get women moving? And I think movement is such a non-negotiable. I mean, muscles are absolutely the best friends to women, from a mood point of view. Got a whole module on that as well, and that goes so much further than endorphins, from a cardiovascular point of view, from reducing cancer risk point of view. Joint pain, contrary to belief, actually moving helps joint pain. Okay, you can get injuries, but on the whole, the benefits still absolutely outweigh the risk. So just to put it all together, by maintaining muscle mass really makes all the difference. Also from a dietary point of view, women do put on a significant amount of weight, or get a decomposition of where their weight is stored into the menopause. And although we all like to think that we shouldn't, weight is nothing to worry about, women do worry about weight. We can be honest about that as well. But we want to focus to be health. At the same time, weight management is a part of that as well. Absolutely. Again, for lots of psychological reasons, just reasons to feel better, look better, and also for health.
Yeah, absolutely.
Sometimes significant health reasons as well. So it's kind of trying to put all of that together. And I think our psychologist does it very well in terms of motivations and negative self-beliefs, positive self-beliefs, and just trying in simple tools how you can change that negative self-belief to helpful self-belief.
I mean, the program sounds amazing. It sounds very like the fact that you've got different professionals and different modules based on it. It sounds very informative, and I actually just want not to kind of go into it with my business, but just to know for myself about it all. It sounds like
that's so
it
true.
can just be a course just for that. So
because we're asking a lot of people, you always ask them, are you doing this professionally or for yourself? And most people tick both boxes.
I think it's, and again, I think for any women out there, even if you're not a fitness professional, it could be something that actually is really informative for anybody, not just fitness professionals.
And we are really happy. We've got quite a lot of male members as well. And actually they've been so responsive, and they've had such good questions and helped us as well to develop little blocks of screening questions and language and all those things. And we're currently working with the Ministry of Defence for their police force as well. Those women go into menopause and still need to pass all their fitness tests, and they've got 3 stone kit that they have to wear, and they do 12-hour shifts. You can talk about regular sleep, but that's not going to work. It's kind of so it's been so interesting to work with women that have very different challenges into the menopause as well.
It does sound like an amazing program, and I think I've said this previously, but fitness professionals and some of the fitness professionals that I know, we often have this imposter syndrome of like, I'm not qualified enough, I don't know enough. And sometimes when we're even really qualified, we still feel that way. So it sounds like a program that fitness instructors could benefit from, just even if they're not specializing in menopause, just to have that knowledge and that awareness, even if they're working with women, or just to have that awareness of all of it.
Absolutely. Because also in terms of bone health, we want to really start ideally pick women start at 30 or 20, or of course their whole lives ideally. And everyone will, males will have mothers and sisters and partners and friends, and I think most fitness professionals probably will train with a range of ages.
Absolutely. Okay, just to wrap it up. Okay, what's the number one tip for those thinking about or already working with menopausal women? So the fitness professionals who are thinking that's maybe that, or maybe they've already got quite a few in front of menopausal women in front of them in their classes. They might be thinking about specializing in it, or they might just want that next kind of step, really. So what would your number one tip be in terms of teaching menopausal women?
I'm not even sure. I was thinking about this, the tip, but it's probably more, I suppose, what's kind of my mission. And I'd love to share with people that do the course and become part of our community as well, is that aging is inevitable, but fragility is not. And there are too many fragile weak women in the world. If you think about sarcopenia, so wasting of muscle mass, that then goes together often with lower bone density as well. I always like to think about how you would want to be as an 80 or 90-year-old female. And if you look down the road, or you've probably got grannies who are like that, you see so many women behind the seam frame. And if you look at their trousers, they've got no bum in it. Like their glutes are gone, and that is proper wasting, that's proper atrophy. And it's almost it's a feminist issue part as well. It's still okay to be a little old fragile lady. I like to live in a world where old ladies aren't fragile. They still have got a bomb in their trousers because they still have boots. They still have, it's not just straight down. So to work with women and not just into the menopause, but really keep them going, have the confidence that they can still have muscle mass. Of course, things will change and they'll age. We all do. But they can still be strong and empowered, and they do not need to be fragile. And I think the fitness world can just do so much work out there. So no fragility out of the
and I love that
with a bum.
Empowering. I love that analogy of not having just give women the butts.
That's right, exactly. That's right.
I love that, and like I say, empowering women to all ages, but into old age as well, that they can still be strong and they can still be healthy and they don't have to be like weak or fragile. Or I love that. I'm going to add in all of the links in the show notes of how you can I would highly recommend the Menopause Movement Training Programme. So I'm going to put all the links in there, all the social media links as well, so you can follow the Menopause Movement. And if there's anything else that Christien wants me to add in, I will add those in the notes as well.
Our webinars are obviously, they're always on our platform for all our community, but if you want to watch them live, they're for free. So if you go to the website, you can just register for the webinars and they're free for everyone. Then you get a bit more of a taste of flavor of how we work, what we do. Our next one in March, I think it's the 27th, is with Dr. Karen Morton. And it's like all the myth and do's and don'ts about HRT, because there's so much confusion about that. And she's brilliant. She's such a good teacher. She really simplifies everything. So that's our next webinar coming up, but everyone is welcome to those webinars. So if they go to the website, they can just register there.
Absolutely, I'll put the links in the show notes. But we as with all my guests, we usually kind of roll on and we could do a whole nother hour, I think, talking about this. So we'll try and get you back on later in the year as well. But I'll add all the links in. But thank you so much, Christien. It's been so informative and really, really amazing. So thank you for joining me.
I really enjoyed that, and good luck with training and exercising women into the menopause.
Absolutely.
I just hope it becomes a big thing.
Thank you so much.
I really enjoyed that. Thank you.
Thank you for joining me and listening to this podcast episode. If you found anything interesting, inspiring, motivating, useful, or just something that you're going to implement from this podcast episode, then please reach out to me and let me know. I love to hear your stories, and I'd love to hear how this has helped you and what you're going to implement. It's my aim and my passion to help fitness business owners build thriving fitness businesses, but also to build a fitness business without burnout and exhaustion, because that's where I found myself a few years ago, and I wouldn't wish that on anyone. So if you need help with your fitness business, whether it's transitioning online, building your classes to fully booked, marketing, having a website and an app, or mastering social media, I think I can help. I have free resources to get you started. I also have some masterclasses in a membership that can really help you to dive in and out of training as and when you need it. And I also have the Ultimate Fitness Business Academy, where you literally have everything, as well as full guidance and full support from me and my eyes on your fitness business. So I can really give you advice and feedback, and we can create a personalized fitness business that not only feels good and aligned with you and what you want to create, but is also successful, thriving, and profitable. All the links to these are below, and please reach out to me if there's anything else that you need or you want to see on the podcast.